Okay, we're supposed to be live now. Let me check on YouTube as always to see if we are connected, because I don't trust YouTube, as you all know. They always say you are connected, but it's Google. You know, they're supposed to be
A mind of
good,
its own.
but
Boy, this really shows when you
sorry,
need
we're
a
live. We're live. We're live. Just so you all know. So let me do my usual thing, which is my public service announcement of the day. There's going to be cursing. Be ready if you haven't watched this channel, just so you know.
That's fucking okay.
For all of you out there, to the microphone so you can hear me well. Where's your fucking mask? Okay? The mask is not for you. The mask is for everybody else. If you use it, you can save lives. If you don't use it, you can get people killed. Or chronic illnesses that are really, really bad in your lungs, in anything else. And as I always say, if you think you're Superman, you're immortal, or you don't care about anybody else's lives or well-being, leave this fucking channel now. I don't want potential mothers in my channel. I just don't want you here. From that point on, and my usual fine way to say things, I'm going to say hello as I see you on my screen, clockwise. Hello, Erin. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Hello, Trish. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks, David.
And hello, Triona. How are you?
I am good. Thank you very much.
How's things on your neck of the woods? Are things getting better, worse, exactly the same, crazy as everywhere in the world? Trish, you first.
Did you say Trish?
Oh,
Trish, I think. Yeah.
like in general, how are things, or like?
Yeah, in general, everything.
Fine. I'm actually not at home right now. I live in New York, but I'm down in Florida taking care of a family matter that required flying, and it was scary, and I did not want to do it, but here we are. So I'm enjoying the warm weather, and I'm on a deadline. Of course, as any colorist knows, you cannot go anywhere without bringing your work with you.
Yeah.
So, but all in all, I can't complain.
Triona, how's things in Ireland?
It is good. We're currently, as we speak, the cabinet is meeting to lock down the country further. So we're now going into almost, all the shops are going to close essentially because we're up to 1,000 a day. So it's a bit. The government here at the very least are very reactive, which is nice, but it shouldn't have gotten that high. But otherwise, I'm grand. On deadlines, behind what's new. That's my life.
High five.
Yeah, high five. Yeah.
So your government essentially going to do what we did in Spain in April, right? You know, that's close down.
I think I think what's going to happen is I can't leave within 5 kilometers, which is fun because I'm buying a house at the moment. So it's going to be fun to see if I can physically get to the house.
Wow.
But that's something that we'll figure that out down the way. So.
Well, if it's like we did in Spain, and we had the same thing, you know, it was 3 kilometers from us, I think.
Yeah.
If you have a voucher, you know, just a legal voucher saying you need to move and it's going to be your house, etc.
Maybe what comes to it, yeah.
They are going to let you do it, you know. And my wife had to go from we live out of Barcelona to Barcelona to work. She just got a voucher from her boss, you know, saying he was going to work. So cops stopped her the control. She showed the voucher, and that was it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I doubt the Gardaí, like our local police force, would really care. I'll probably tell them. They'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Okay. How's it for you? How's it for you, Erin, in the UK?
Yeah, good. I'm just like Trish. I've recently been on a plane as well because I was in Italy visiting my parents, and then I came back to the UK here. So yeah, it's not great. It's a bit scary, but I'm at home all the time. Other than that, likely with the rest of my family can stay at home as well. So both here in the UK and in Italy. So just pushing through. Lots of deadlines, lots of piled up stuff. So yeah, powering through.
What's the thing? Imagine I'm your doctor. I just changed my name. My name from now on is Victor Frankenstein. I have my syringe here, which is a pentel thing, just so you see. As I shoot you and I say, it's over. Pandemic is over. We're back to normal. What's the thing you miss the most? The thing that for months you've been wanting to do, you haven't been able to. Erin?
I think for me, it's just like being a bit more free to travel. I would have wanted to go visit some friends around Europe. I would have really loved to go back to New York for Comic-Con. just a thought bubble. So many. I'm not one that like to go out often, like socializing that much, but like visiting those few friends that I have both in Italy and here in UK that I can reach without having to change country, that would be nice. And also just being able to fly to places and conventions and just meet people. I think that's what I miss the most.
Triona?
So I miss the sun. The sun is great. I love the sun. You don't really get it in Ireland, so I'd be very I was meant to take like a summer holiday this year. I was kind of thinking of maybe going to Portugal or something like that, seeing friends. And unfortunately, no, there's no chance of that. So I'd be kind of the same with like Erin, just kind of, having like a summer holiday, getting out of my own country, because usually I'm like a bit of a jet setter. And just being able to kind of freely go to like restaurants and things like that, like I miss going to bars. I miss kind of socializing. I am like I haven't seen most of my friends now for like a good year, but it's so locked down, none of it's open. So
I'm going to go to Ireland. I miss Ireland so much it hurts. I was actually there in late February, March, and then things were exploding in the States right before I came back. So I literally got back in the nick of time. But we were supposed to have another trip in May, and I just miss it so much. I want to hug our dear family friends so much and just be up on the mountain and out in the air and in nature. And I don't mind the rain. It's okay with me. And I miss hugs. I mean, I haven't really hugged anybody. I live alone and I don't have a dog, and I have plants, thank God. But
not very receptive.
I haven't like properly hugged anybody in months, and it's just the most bizarre feeling,
Do you guys mean conventions at all, or you miss, as is my case, I don't mean conventions, I mean seeing you all at the conventions, to hug people, to just, as I was talking to Chaikin about that, some months ago when this started, and we were both saying, I don't care about the cons, you just do them because you have to do them. It's fine, you have fun, you love the fans, but going to dinner and suddenly see something that you weren't expecting, that you haven't seen for years, and starting to talk like it was yesterday, and spending those 3 hours, that's what make it, that's what makes us love it. Go back home and say, I have the time to talk to that person that I haven't seen in years, that you can only do at conventions. Is that what you mean from the conventions too, or is mostly the fans and the signings and all that?
I think for me it's both. I mean, I miss meeting people. I'm still quite new to the convention world as a professional to be already bored of them, I think. So I do miss the like tabling experience and like meeting people and just very silly chat about the comics that we like and the comics that we work on, and just like that kind of atmosphere. But I do miss also just hanging out, especially because, I mean, coming from Italy, already going to conventions is not always super easy, because like flying to the States is very, very expensive and all that. So already like coming to London for MCM or Thought Bubble, or flying to New York for the con, that's something that I like. And yeah, you get to see people that you only get to see there. So I miss that.
Yeah, so we had kind of cancelled our like local conventions and things, and like I think the last con I was in New York, and like really it's kind of the same, where like I find them there's the American cons are so huge, it's boggling. I was like, I've never seen this many people in a room before, but it like really it comes down to like people you'll never see otherwise, or like I have like a lot of American friends. I was actually, just before you and I were probably crossing paths a little bit, Trish, because I was actually in America at the end of January, and then you were you went to Ireland, and I was at a comic saloon, and it was just so nice to kind of be with like professionals and kind of we kind of trading stories and trading kind of industry stuff. Like it's not an experience I really get much in Ireland, because the community is really small, and obviously at the moment we can't really go near each other. So.
Trish?
I actually haven't been to a convention in almost about 10 years. I was, we were taking care of my mom at home. She got very ill. And so when she passed, unfortunately, my dad passed just a few months after her. And while we were taking care of her, the New York convention had really grown in size and popularity. So I was really missing that chance to go. So like this past year, I was like, okay, I can finally like catch my breath and maybe get to the con and see so many people I've missed over the years. And then COVID.
Life. Yeah.
I was like, okay, but being a colorist, being a freelancer, you know, you're prepared for COVID life. You've been working at home alone by yourself in the grueling conditions for a long time. So what's another year or two? We'll see how it goes. But
Yeah.
I do miss a lot of people I haven't seen in ages. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Do you, any of you, do you find that with lockdown, being locked at home, aside of the usual thing that freelancers stay at home most of the time, we know that, you know, it's like regular life is this for us. Do you find there's two ways there's two answers I've gotten about this. One is I'm not able to work, or at least haven't able to work properly in the first few months of the lockdown.
Yeah.
And the other answer was, by the end of the day, I realized I've overworked a lot. I've done a lot more than expected, because, you know, you don't measure time the same way. How's it for you guys? Whoever wants to go first.
Productivity is it's hard to focus, especially those early months. In New York, it was very scary what was happening, because we were like that first wave, whatever you want to call it, where a lot of the horrific stuff was happening. It was very hard to focus. And so I do find like I'm still putting in long hours, but I'm not necessarily the amount of pages getting out as I thought I would, you know, or stuff like that. So like, and then after a while, you just have to throw everything out the window and say, look, we're just going to take it one day at a time. We'll have good days and bad days. And nobody's living normally right now. So I think we all kind of get it, you know, we're doing our best.
Yeah, it's very like, it's like I said, a bit like I've been trained in the shadows for this, in a way, for like this kind of lockdown. But it definitely, the first couple months where it was very scary, because my government took it very seriously at the beginning, because our Taoiseach, or the leader of our country, was actually a doctor beforehand. So I think we were one of the first people to kind of lock down.
They did great.
And yeah, and like and now, and obviously it's kind of fallen to pieces since then, but it was very hard to focus, I found. But there was also kind of like a sense in the, I think in the communities, or like in the comics industry in general, it was like no one knew what was happening. So there was a good, like, I think 2 or 3 weeks where everyone was like, we'll get back to you, because we don't know what's going to happen. You know, and I think like a lot, you know, for us, we're so based on like the artist's schedule. There's a lot of artists who, like, you know, understandably didn't want to work, or not that they didn't want to work, but they couldn't work, or they were like stressed, or, you know, and I was the same as well, where like there was a good point, I think, in February and March, where like I was really because we were down to like 2 kilometers, and I couldn't see my partner as well, I think for about a month and a half, because I physically couldn't reach him. It was just kind of like a very kind of depressing and kind of difficult, and hard, obviously hard to work at the same time. So I definitely was not at my full output.
Yeah, I think I was kind of lucky in all of this, because basically I flew. So I'm originally from Italy, and then my partner is here in the UK, and I normally spend maybe like either a couple of weeks or a month and a half in the UK, and then I can come and go back to Italy and spend some time with my parents, and then come back here. So I had flown to here in February. I think it was like the 22nd or 25th of February, and I was supposed to stay here for 12 days, and then Italy locked down, and I was not able to go back, and I stayed here for 6 months, because just like it was not possible to buy plane tickets to go back, because the country is closed. So I was kind of in a situation in which I was lucky to be with my partner, because I think that like being locked away for 6 months would have been much harder.
Yeah.
But I'm someone who I get very frustrated if I'm not doing something, which work-wise, or like I need to find an output for my energy. So like either I throw myself into a hobby or like a personal project, or I have to work. If I am not productive, I get very anxious. It was actually very good for me the first couple of months, and then around maybe April is when the comic industry started kind of to collapse on itself with like Diamond and everything, kind of like everyone not knowing exactly what was going on with distribution, so everything slowed down. And that was the time for me, was like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. I will take every day as it comes and just push on.
And
Because
depending
I
where you
couldn't do
live,
anything.
I'm sorry, depending where you live, not everybody was in the same situation. Like, I'm living in New York where, like I said, it was really horrific. And when I came back from Ireland, I had to hit the ground running. It's like, I have to buy toilet paper, and milk.
Yeah.
Like, I was stocking up for months and months. And like, I had to tell my editors on the West Coast where things were not as bad. Like, it's bad here. I have to like take a few days and just like prepare, because I don't know what's happening. So
Yeah.
And then of course now you see, it's so strange because you see it traveling across the country, and then there's hot spots. So it's that uncertainty is very stressful. Like, one moment, like Ireland, you think you're doing so well, and then suddenly everything's locked down again. So
I think it's so insidious as a virus, because it's just so random is the problem. It was definitely very scary here as well because of it. We're kind of, there was definitely a good 2 or 3 weeks where I was like, this is it, this is how I die,
No, here was the same. It seemed that the lockdown had worked amazingly well. It was a really harsh lockdown, as you guys know, and suddenly we're going back. It's especially focusing in the Madrid area. The rest of Spain seems to be more or less fine, and the ICUs are not packed like they were in March in April. So it seems more or less under control. But suddenly in Madrid seems like a hotspot again. So I was having a laugh when I had Grant. I was having a laugh, about he was talking about the virus in his Grant Morrison in his usual way, and he was telling me it seems that this virus has a mind of its own, and it knows when we are going to control it, and then finds a way to get over us again. And I was having a laugh, but the more time it's happening, I'm tempted to call him. It's like, how the fuck did you know? Because it certainly looks like it. It's like every time it seems to be under control for whatever reason. And I'm not going to enter into people being irresponsible or not, because, that's always going to happen. There's no way. Now they're talking about the vaccine, and like, when?
Yeah. It's so hard to plan and know what to do ahead. You got to really just take it one day at a time.
Whatever New Zealand did is what we need to do, basically.
Yeah.
There's a couple of countries, there's another country besides them that are just did it right. And so whatever they did, we have to suck it up and behave.
Yeah, no, it's easier said than done.
I think the other one was Singapore, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised that they say tomorrow Iceland is clean again, because they always do things really well. Like taking the bankers and putting them all in jail and things like that. But anyway, that's my thing. So let's talk about our thing. Well, first I gotta say that I don't know if you've seen Trish. Carmen Carnero is saying hello to you.
I was, and Amanke as well. I don't know if I'm saying.
Amanke too, yes.
I was trying to like wave or like their.
Not wave. Yeah, you can do it. J2, you're amazing. It's been an absolute career goal to get to work with you. How to re-team up in the future again? He's saying Amanke.
Hi guys.
Let's go to our thing. If I asked you, what's the tools of the trade for you? The tools you always use, like I need this or I could die. And the tool that you would never use, even with a point gun pointed at your head, what would it be?
Photoshop. I just ride or die, baby, with Photoshop at this point. I have a big. You can't see it. I have a jig. I don't want to pick it up because I will fall over. But I have this big Cintiq, as I was saying earlier, this 32-inch Cintiq. That I actually got very nice and cheap from Germany there a while back. So that's my main tool, and obviously like a computer and Photoshop.
Mm-hmm. Trish?
I don't use a Cintiq. I tried an early one, and I found it bothered my back and neck and shoulders. Like the ergonomics just was not good for me. So I went back to my Intuos. So I use big monitor in front of me, cinema display, and my Intuos. And a MacBook Pro, which I'm actually using an older version of Photoshop, CS6. because I don't like the subscription model. I know I will have to cave in at some point to it, but I'm working on a 2012 MacBook Pro that's like a tank. I love it. And an older version of Photoshop, and so far so good. Now I probably just jinxed myself.
Yeah.
The lack of
Wait until my deadline's over and I'm back home.
Yeah.
always remember that saying about the lack of the Irish. So don't give it.
Yeah. It's hell fast for me before, so.
Oh yeah, me too. So I'm a Wacom fan as well. I've always used Wacom since I started with digital when I was a young teenager, and I have at home in Italy, which is my main workstation. I have a big iMac. I actually have two screens, and I use an old Intuos 4, not even the Pro. I was just like, it's probably 9 or 10 years old, and I love it. And if I could buy 25 more just to have it available for the rest of my life, I would. Here in the UK, I have a smaller Wacom, another very old model that I bought refurbished from Wacom, because.
So you, Erin, and then Trish, you both have iMac and MacBook Pro. Have you ever thought about working with an iPad Pro, or the Wacoms are good enough?
I bought an iPad Pro, but it didn't. The software, like I wanted to use Photoshop on it, but Photoshop wasn't quite ready for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I believe missing from like the iPad Pro version for Photoshop that makes it just impossible to color like professionally.
Yeah, I'm a Photoshop person too. I mean, there's lots of people who use Procreate to color comics, and I've never really tried. I don't really love the screen tablet thing. I prefer. I know it's weird. A lot of people don't like it, but I prefer looking in front of me and doing this.
Yeah.
This
For
me, it's not
because I like seeing when I'm coloring, but like I actually do like a lot of sketching and art as well, just for fun. So like I find the Cintiq better that way.
In your mind, it sounds good. Oh, work directly on the screen. That sounds great. But like in reality, it just wasn't working for me. I should try it again.
Yeah.
I
will say,
very interesting, because I think a lot of colorists feel like I think that colorists prefer tablets, and maybe comic artists like people, pencilers, or people who sketch or draw or paint prefer screens. I don't know if there's a size thing or a hand position thing.
I think like this Cintiq as well. It does wash out the colors a little bit, and I don't trust my eyes at all. I'm always kind of just triple checking on like other computers and things like that, like the colors, because I just, you'd be amazed how much the Cintiq kind of washes things out. Just personally anyway.
Yeah, I was asking because most people I know that works to color in iPad Pro, of course they don't use Photoshop, because the Photoshop for iPad is a piece of shit. Let's call it what it is. And they also ask for subscription for something that is bad. Most people use Affinity Photo, which is more or less the same, but what you're using on iPad Pro, it's exactly the same, but that you use in the computer. You can move from one to the other seamlessly, because it's exactly the same tool. But let me see. Carmen says you should show the room you work in, the cats, the pets, and all that. Carmen is always obsessed to have people show in their studios.
That's my cat behind me. This is Leroy. Hello, Leroy. There you go.
Oh, I didn't notice him.
Yeah, he's just rested on the back there. So.
When you get a script, when you get the art, when you're working on a page, what is the aspects that you feel are essential in terms of storytelling? Emotion, finding the emotion via the color, the tones, etc. Or first the formal aspects, to go with what the page wants in the art, or you always think about expanding what the art has to give more emotion to the reader?
For me, I think it's making sure that the reader's eye goes to the right spot on the page, where the important moment is happening. Like you could have two characters interacting, and it could be a beautiful background, but you might want to mute some backgrounds more than others. Just if there's an intense moment happening, you really want the focus to be on the characters at that one panel, maybe, So you can sometimes encounter pages where there's a lot going on, but you really, as a colorist, you're sort of like the cinematographer, you have to make sure the viewer's eye goes to the spot that the writer wants to see the most, you know.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that really, because it's kind of if you look at pages in black and white, and obviously like they're beautiful, the artwork, but color is really what leads the eye from like panel to panel, even that and also kind of at the same time and kind of conveying the right emotion is very important. Where I think there's a temptation with a lot of people to kind of like, you know, I'm going to color the sky blue because, you know, the sky is generally blue, but there's also kind of taken consideration of like the tone of the page, the emotion, what's exactly going on. You know, like I will kind of back away from local color a lot of the time just to get like the right expression going on the page.
Yeah, I agree. For me as well, storytelling and readability, I think, should be the first priorities. There can be some exceptions, but there's usually more for like very particular projects that have a very specific artistic view, and so you can kind of go a bit crazy with that, but you always have to keep in mind that the page has to be read in a certain way, and that the eye, and that's what, you know, it just makes it work. You know, if you concentrate on the fact that, I know, panel 5 has an incredibly tragic thing happening, but your eye goes to panel 5, and then you have to kind of like go back to panel 1, 2, and 3. You kind of lose the suspense, the feeling, the emotion that takes you to panel 5. So I would say that emotion is a function of readability, just as the rest of the color.
Yeah.
Well, and in that sense, to portray that emotion, to make it as clear as it needs to be for the reader, what is more important for you? To show it, just to show it, to go all the way with it, or to suggest? You want the readers to complete what you suggest, or you want to get the full information?
I think it really depends on the intensity of the emotion that's going on the page. Like, I think there's definitely room for like more subtle, nuanced colors. Times when like there's, you know, particularly sad scenes, or like sometimes you know, if I feel that there's a bit more nuance or kind of background expression basically going on a page, that's when kind of, you know, you might not go full throttle on the colors. But there's other things as well that especially like I want to say like the big wow, like the big reveal moments where it just needs intensity really to get across what's happening. Just for me personally, anyway, that's how I'd approach it.
Yeah, I agree with Tree. For me, it's the same. Like, there's some panels that need you to be completely like go full with everything and the emotions and colors, and others that are still full of emotion and feelings and meaning, but it also comes to what the penciler and inker gave to the page. So our work is always to complete and enhance the color. It should not just take all the stage. So it's always, you know, where did they take this, and what should I add to that to complete the picture, and not to just override what's been told.
And sometimes isn't it the other way around? Don't you feel that you have to subdue what's on the pencils and ink? I don't mean erase it, of course, but I mean the intensity is too much on that said panel compared to the rest, and to balance it, you feel you have to subdue the colors in that panel a bit, so all the page works as a whole.
I think sometimes you get like I will not black out things, but I will put in a color holds that kind of shifts the amount of black even on the page, because it can sometimes be black. It's a very intense color, so sometimes kind of pulling back on the artwork can be useful in that way, because it's you might feel, not that the artist has done it wrong, but you might feel that the scene calls for like a more subtle kind of expression or something. That's something personally I would do.
Trish?
Yeah, I agree. Color holds are a great tool for emotion and pushing things back and creating an atmosphere. I don't know if I'm going off on a tangent now. Like, I'm working on a Wonder Woman book right now where, you know, she's floating in the air, and her home island is in the distance, and the temples and everything. And you always want to create sort of a mystical look about that. So color holds are great for creating that emotion and magical feeling, you know.
Yeah.
And art dictates a lot. Like, sometimes the art is so strong, like you do pull back on the colors and just let the line art stand on its own practically. And then some line art is very open, and you do have to do a lot of more work on it to create that drama, like shadows or highlights and whatnot. So I think the art, I take my cues from the art a lot, you know, when it comes to that.
Erin?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, as Tree was saying, sometimes you do have to make the line art work for you a bit more, and sometimes you have to work for the line art in a different way. It's just sometimes the line art might need a bit more help depending on who drew the page, depending on there's so many factors that we have to deal with. It can be time and the script and this and that. So there's always something that the line art might need some help, and some other times we just need to take a step back. It's as I think we all agree that it really depends on what we have in front of us. And what we
it's everything is so dependent on line art, where like I've taken completely different approaches to different things. Because I think I don't have like a really set style myself that I'm, you know, I do flat color. Sometimes I do like a lot of painting. Kind of just depends on what I'm doing, you know, but it's all dictated what I think is best anyway for the artwork.
Let's go into the rules and the way to break them, because you always have, of course, color theory, blah blah blah. How much do you follow color theory, and how much you say, screw it, to hell with it, I'm just going to do what works? Trish?
I actually dropped out of my color theory class in art school. Not that I didn't want
Okay.
the teacher was just bonkers, and it's not that I didn't want to take it, but he was just wow. So I
Don't say that while Erin and I are drinking.
so I wish I had properly learned it, because I've always struggled with it, and I still do to this day. I could not tell you color theory. I couldn't teach a class. So I basically fly by the seat of my pants. I'm sure over the years working in comics, I've picked up, you know, some of it just by working and learning. But I still struggle. I do. So I just, I'm a big fan of like Disney backgrounds art, you know, so like that's the kind of stuff I absorb, and classic illustrations like from the 50s and 60s. I was an illustration major. I didn't get into comics till I was 29. So I sort of came at it from a different angle. But like I said, I do still struggle with color theory. So I bookmark websites that are helpful, and sometimes people will have threads on Twitter talking about color theory, and I try to save those and learn. So never stop learning. Never.
Yeah. And that's kind of the same for me, where like I actually never attended art college. I did history, would you believe, in college, and I went on to do a master's in kind of visual critical art. So like I never learned anything about just about color theory in general. I think a lot of it for me is like pure instinct. Like what do I think looks best in the page? I think as well it's important to kind of look at what other colorists are doing, and I don't even just mean colorists, I mean like painters, and kind of thinking how did they achieve that kind of expression or emotion. If I look at some of the old masters and paintings and things, and like some of the things they did with color, like it boggles me. And I think that kind of like really color theory, I think color theory is a good place to start, really, when it comes to for like new beginners and things like that. But like, you know, really really basic things are kind of color matching. Like obviously don't, you know, put two super dark colors next to each other, you know, kind of, you know, put blue and orange as a nice contrast, etc., etc. But like I think the more you learn about it, the more that I think it's not so much about, because you're not going to have like a perfect piece of art every time that's exactly the same and approaches exactly the same. You know, so many different artists with different approaches that you really, it's all about kind of instinct and making kind of snap decisions in coloring, because you don't have a lot of time to like go like, well, you know, would green work there, would blue work there, you know. Sometimes it's just about kind of like, well, actually, what about yellow? You know.
Yeah, same for me. I did not study art. I don't have a classic art background. I studied languages. I have a bachelor's degree in Japanese language and culture. Always studied languages during my whole school career. So I started more with art as an illustrator. Like I like drawing. I've always liked drawing. So I learned. I am a self-taught as much as one can be self-taught. And the usual discourse is that we all learn. We don't just teach each other, but we learn from so many other things that we see. So lots of DeviantArt tutorials, lots of a bit of YouTube, a bit of this, a bit of that, couple of workshops here and there, but it was just mainly I know, reds and greens, blues and oranges, yes, that black and white values, I know what that, but yeah, if I were like Trish said, if I had to give a lesson, like if tomorrow I get invited to a college to give a lesson, I would be very, very scared because the level of technical knowledge is not academic, but it comes to instinct, and just all of us, we probably with the same page, we would apply the same kind of principles, but in very, very different ways, because that's just the eye and your baggage and everything that you've loved and you appreciated, and like everything that means something to you, just with all of those references together, like classical painters or modern art or just every kind of visual influence. It's a learning experience.
So in a way, that old saying that you gotta know the rules to break them, it does apply to you guys, but not by knowing the rules in school, but by instinctively applying them by instinct, right?
Yeah. So I think color is not so much about color choices, it is about values, like also understanding where everything is on via planes on the page. So like the foreground, the middle ground, and the background, and like understanding what values need to be where. And color obviously plays a part of it, the right color choice, but like I think it's more about making things distinct and kind of sharp from each other depending on the art.
Yeah, I think that color theory on its own, you might know everything there is to know about just color theory and color matching and palettes and things, but if you do not understand values and planes, even just as an instinct, like if you don't have a concept, and that is usually what you see when you have a beginner's page in front of you. And that's why I used to do everything was incredibly detailed in the same exact way here, there, and 5 kilometers from the viewer.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like and it's good in theory, but not.
Yeah, all the colors are beautiful and pretty, and the page look amazing, but readability, what we were saying before, it's just like.
Yeah. That's why I say to kind of people who are new, like one of the best things you can do is that you can remove the ink layer, and then you can you can make it grayscale, and then have you can really, really see where the values are going wrong there. And just to for anyone who's in the chat, values basically means how something how colors are in comparison to each other in terms of light and darkness. So you can have like a red and a blue that would be very similar value, and they look kind of distinct on when they're like in full color, but in grayscale they can look almost identical. That's kind of the what values basically mean. So
and I could highly recommend for beginners who are in the chat, I learned digital coloring. I started out at a perfect time because hand coloring was still going on at DC when I started, and then it switched over to digital, and I wasn't part of a studio, and I didn't know how to learn it. There was no tutorials, there were no books, there was no videos, nothing. So God bless Mark Chiarello at DC. He taught me the basics. He was just learned it himself pretty much. And fortunately, I lived next door to DC at the time. So, but he wrote a book that even though it's been out a few years now, Mark Chiarello, the coloring, look it up. It's a great book because it talks about not just color, but it talks about values. It covers everything. So it's great for just getting those basics down. So if you're looking into maybe exploring coloring as a career, that's a really good one. There's such like an embarrassment of riches now for people starting out. Like there's YouTube videos, there's, Twitter is a great resource, and Facebook, and, artists are everywhere, and colorists love to share, and there's so much great information being shared, and just images, like Google image search. Like when I needed reference for something, I used to have to go to the library, the picture collection, like physically walk and go. And it's just, everything is now at your fingertips. It's such a wonderful thing, the internet. In our case, it's wonderful to have that kind of reference and education at our fingertips to keep learning. So people who are just starting out now, you're doing great. But I highly recommend that book. Like, it's, if you want a physical book to hold in your hands, it's a great tool to learn. Yeah,
I think it's the Coloring and Lettering the DC Way by Mark and Todd Klein, right?
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. I didn't have the exact title in my head, but
Yeah, don't worry. I'm a painter, you know that.
It's a very good book. I have it too. I can confirm it's a great book.
So how difficult it is to switch your mind from your mind's eye, whatever you're gonna call it, from this is reality, this is representing reality. You know, this is how it looks, this is how it should look, based on what the script asks for, what the art asks for. As you said, Tree, before, the sky is blue. Yes, we see it. But sometimes as a colorist, you have to say, I don't care if it's blue. This is not what the story calls for.
Yeah,
the storytelling tells me I got to go in that direction. How difficult it is for you guys to decide reality, I got to step away from reality to create this world?
There is, it really, I think, kind of comes to different factors. First off, that like there are companies who will want you to use kind of local color a lot, and I say local color, which is, you know, kind of more standard colors, and there are other people who will they will want something a bit more wacky, for lack of a better term. I think when it comes down to it, really, it's depending on the expression on the page, depending on how willing the artist is or the editor is to allow you to kind of do it. Like, for example, with I worked on Hit Girl with Alison Sampson, and she just told me, just go wild. It doesn't matter if you even like go outside the lines, which is like a cardinal sin within colors. And like, so I just kind of did crazy, wacky colors. The sky was never blue. You know, it was always kind of like a weird kind of like kind of bright green or something like that, you know, but it kind of, that's what sort of suits. And then there's other stuff that I think like the more grounded in reality it is, you know, the more likely I would be to kind of have more natural looking colors. So
Erin, Trish?
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's the same. I've had to work on projects in which I was kind of asked to keep it as realistic, or at least faithful to like local colors as possible. It's actually been a problem a couple of times in which I've had some changes of editors, and some editors with some like at some point was like, you know, I want you to use some like crazy colors here. It's like, no, I've been doing this for 10 issues. I can't just switch to crazy colors now, because it will look not just weird in the page in a good way, but it was just like disrupt the entire style of what we've been doing so far. So it's either like a big style change now that we take, but we have to commit to it, or it has to stay in a certain way. Because when you start with a book, especially if it's something that is probably meant to be kind of an ongoing thing, you kind of have to do that choice.
Yeah,
kind of early
having
on.
like a style guide sort of way.
Yeah, so I think it's very fun and it works really well, but it works really well on some things. So just like Tree was saying, you have to know where the pencils and the general feel of the story and of the project takes you. So if it does allow you, you can go crazy and that's super fun, but it can backfire very quickly.
yeah. Well, that depends on the book and the project. Like with Vertigo, anything goes pretty much. But say I'd be working on a book for Vertigo, there's still pages where you want to lean more towards local color, you know, like you don't want a scene in a kitchen to be too off the wall, you know?
Yeah.
But then like, you know, a couple pages later, maybe something mystical is happening, and then you want the impact of, you know, really out there colors, unusual approaches and palettes. So, yeah, I sometimes will catch myself saying I'm using local color too much here. I need to just sort of stretch my creative muscles a bit. But I'm just always trying to find that balance, you know, like I don't want to have a whole book full of an unusual palette and then like nothing stands out. Like you want the important scenes to stand out with that extra oomph of color. I'm not explaining this very well,
No,
but
no, that makes perfect
No, I
sense.
think
No,
it
that
makes
makes
perfect sense.
Yeah, no, but you're very beholden to whatever the artist wants, whatever the writer wants. You know, there's a whole host of people who
yeah,
have all sorts of opinions on,
yeah.
most of them good, to be honest. But yeah,
The script is so important because the writer is kind of guiding you along the story and telling you, maybe the first couple of pages are just kind of setting things up, and you don't want anything too splashy right away. Or maybe they start with something dramatic like splash page, first page. So the writer and the artist are giving you cues, like, so you know where to emphasize going a little off track and intense and bright with your colors, and where to pull back and go more local.
Yeah, I think that even if we are all working on our own, it's always a team effort. So you just you do need to be aware of even if you don't I mean, if you have a constant communication with the rest of the team, it's great. But if you don't do that, you have to ask yourself what their intentions might have been. And if you can't figure it out, maybe it's better if you shoot and work with someone.
There's a lot of mind reading, I think, when it comes to coloring comics. That you need to take someone going like, just make it pop, and like you need to understand what that means, and kind of have a little bit of a psychic seance, and then you go like, oh, okay, so they want a pink, So
but that's probably the worst when they tell you, an editor or somebody tells you, make it pop. Make it pop.
Pop how?
Make a million different
I think
like,
we all
pop,
have
can you be a little more specific? Oh, I told you I wanted to pop. Okay, so is it that
we all
you're
have
like
a
Father Reed or Satan when they tell you make it pop, and you're like, okay, kill me now.
I think
and that could be just as simple as like throwing a color hold on the background, and make your characters pop, or subduing the colors in the background. So you kind of have to,
mind read a little bit. No, generally I find that most people will be good, and they'll explain what they mean. Sometimes you get the odd person who doesn't quite know how to vocalize it, essentially. And there's be kind of like a bit of a back and forth, and then you go, oh, that's what you mean. Okay, that's fine.
Sometimes does it happen to you that you see the art for a page? Example, we see a scene that is everything is happening in a kitchen in one page. Okay, you see like, okay, that's just a kitchen, so it tells you, okay, just local colors, as you said. But then you read the script, and the script says something really bad is going to happen in that kitchen in the next page. That automatically changes the way you're going to focus on that page, right? Do you forget local colors instantly and say, I need to go the other way?
Not exactly. You can still use the local colors, but maybe that for that first page, maybe the last couple panels, you might throw in an extra shadow or an extra hint of color of what's to come. So like you might start off the page local, and then just sort of like create that mood, like towards the end of the page, that the next page has something coming up, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
You've got control.
Sorry.
That's where the colorist has kind of control. So
yeah, that's what I meant, that the script is telling you, even if the art is not, the script is telling you, we are going to go in this direction. So maybe, as you said, manipulate the page turn. You go gradually with values, but that bit by bit, you go from the first corner to last corner, increasing the sensation of weirdness in a way, right? Like using colors that shouldn't be there, that are not a real fit, but you're telling the reader, which we'll go to this later, to the primary colors, but you're instantly telling the reader, careful, something's going to happen, just with those hints, right?
Yeah, because I think there's the idea of like narrative color is very important, and I like that there's a running from like panel to panel, you're kind of basically telling a story almost with the color. So like I've done things where I've like increased the intensity on pages. I've had like red, for example, seep in slowly on pages, just kind of show that like there's something bad is going to happen. There's lots of kind of ways you can go about it. I get stupidly creative, like just, I say stupidly in like a bad way. Here I kind of go like, let's do all the panel borders red or something stupid like that, like.
Yeah, I've actually had to deal with exactly that kind of scene. I've had a scene in which there's two characters in a kitchen, and there seems to be like a normal situation, and then one of the two characters very, very violently attacks the other one in a way that you don't expect, because the character is supposed to be a very nice and polite and sweet person. And so I played a lot with the shadows from the light on top. So I had everything lit. It was early morning, so it was not full bright day yet. So I played a lot with the lights from the top, to like just hiding the eyes and like lots like seeping reds, and you can do so much with it, even just like depending on what kind of approach you want to take with it. But yeah, it's you might want to reveal it more or less depending on what happens, what's seen, the type. Maybe if you're working on a horror comic that is just like constantly preparing you for a scary scene, then maybe that will require a more aggressive change of atmosphere. But if you're working on something that is like a huge change compared to the rest of the book, which was very nice and quiet and nothing ever happened, then that you might want to handle it in a different way. So it really depends on the script. And
but you never want it to be too obvious, right? You always want to control yourself as a colorist to hint and never go too far, and to make it telegraphic. Like, hey, I'm telling you, hey, this is gonna happen.
It could be just something as subtle as like putting more dramatic shadow across somebody in that last panel, or
and it's something that the reader doesn't realize when they see it, probably, but it's something that maybe after you see the horrible thing that's happened in the next page, once you go back and recheck the pages, you can see the subtle hints.
Like kind of subconscious.
They do the same thing, it just.
Yeah, because I've done things like slowly adding more red items to a page, like in like a kitchen where you as you see more and more of the appliances, they're more and more red as time goes on, and then bam, someone gets hit across the face or something like that in the next page.
In these cases, or in any other cases, actually, primary colors are your friends or your enemy?
I think any color can be your friend or your enemy. No, I don't think that yellow or blue or magenta or anything specific always has the same use or same meaning. It's always it's always a tool you can use in different ways.
Yeah. Like, I think it's any color can be the worst thing in the world, or it can be the best thing in the world. Some people will say, I hate brown, but like brown is like very vague anyway. Generally, what you want to avoid in everything is just making things look muddy, and you can make things look muddy with that green and blue.
So in the end, everything depends on context, right, Trish?
Yep.
Now, let's. What is in when you see a page of art, of course? What is that makes you decide this needs volumetric? That's the word I used. You can correct me if that's wrong as shit. Volumetric or flat colors?
Oh, it's all about the art. I mean, it's all about the art. Like the chunkier art, the bigger the lines, the more flat you can go. The art I'm working on right now has very thin lines, and I find like you can't go flat with that. Like, I have to do a lot more modeling. It's more labor intensive. So, it's just all about the art for me anyway.
Yeah.
The question is in that sense for, sorry to interrupt, Erin. This is a question I'm making for the new colorists, for the new guys, because sometimes I get this question, how do you decide? And it's basically what I said. The art is going to tell you where to go, right? Erin, please.
It dictates it.
Yeah. I think it's, for me, I would actually go and look at what like the artist has colored themselves, or what the artist has kind of had before is a bit of an indicator. I definitely have like my own kind of style, but like I will adapt it and kind of do what I need to do, because it's generally whatever they like to do generally works best for them, and also probably works best for the lines as well. There are times when I think that something just suits the mood of the book best if it's like flat color. Like I think that if you're I think flat color for kind of high impact stuff kind of works, you know, that like when I'm working on Crowded, for example, and Crowded is a very ironically crowded book, and it's not the kind of thing that I think you could render or like volumize, you know, you'd be there for hours. So I made the decision at the beginning of the book that kind of we're going to do this flat color because I think it works best with 10 rose lines, and B, for my own sanity, because there's, you know, Crowded has like a lot of crowd scenes, it has like a lot going on. It often has like 10 panels per page or something like that, you know.
Oh my
So
God.
I know we're all kind of like and no, it's a fantastic book, but like obviously that was kind of almost like a financial decision on my end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just spent 14 hours on one page. I spent a whole day on one page, and I'm like, it's you're always learning as time goes by. Like, you look back and you say, okay, maybe I could have gone a little more flat there. Like, because I have the classic colorist problem of zooming in 600% on what I'm working on. And then when you zoom out, it's not as big or important. And then when it prints, it's even less.
I know,
so.
it becomes like 3 pixels and you're like, why did I spend hours on that?
So I will labor over the shading on a coffee cup that ends up being like, you know, practically the size of a, you know, fingernail or whatever. But you really have to kind of step back and zoom back and realize, okay, I don't need to like render the heck out of that plant in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's if it's a question like if a beginner was to ask me something like that, I would say definitely look at the art. If you are not able or experienced enough to distinguish what type of art needs what type of coloring, look at your collection of books, look at your comics that you have in your bookshelves. You know, like if you have something, as the Trish was saying, like very open lines, very light, not really much black, that generally calls for a bit more work on your part. There might be some exceptions, and even if you do decide, personally I do have a more rendered style that I gravitate towards, but I've done flat books or like flat-ish books. And even when you're doing, I would say, especially when you're doing a more rendered style, you can still use flats, or like you can still, you know, color holes in flats, and like flat or less rendered surfaces are your friends. The fact that you are doing a more rendered thing doesn't mean that everything has to be 300% detailed everywhere, because that is going to kill you. And I think that's something, and also it's going to kill the book, just very, very, from a very like from a critique point of view. You know, it's just, it can be very beautiful, but unless it's probably a very traditional French published comic in which everything has a kind of painterly style to it, and it works, but because that's the type of thing that you expect from that. Like if you're doing an American comic that is painted and colored with that kind of detail, it might be weird to look at some point. If the art doesn't call for it, it's just going to be strange. So just be aware of what you're working on. If you're not sure, just test. You know, do a test with a more flat and then a more rendered, maybe a mix in between, and also think about what time you have to work on it, because that's important. So
there's definitely been times when I've started a book and I've gone like, well, you know, maybe this will look best, and then I kind of do a page and I'm like, you know what, no, that did not work. That was an experiment. We're just gonna I've literally kind of restarted pages. It's like, obviously you can't just switch the style. I'm very, very particular, and I don't like to switch up the style at all throughout a course of like a series. So like and like it was I even work in like RGB and CYMK, and like just depending on like what I'm doing, and I refuse to switch halfway through the book, which is maybe not the best, but like it's just, you know, I'm very stringent in that, because I'm always fearful that it's gonna be a bit jarring for readers.
Yeah, I do the same. I usually on the flat books I work in CMYK, and the more rendered one I work in RGB. That's, to be honest, that's like to the extent of my understanding of RGB and CMYK. I'm not very well versed into it. One of those things I'm just like, this year I'm just going to study more of this stuff and like understand gamut and this and that. I'm not that skilled in that, but like I know that generally flat colors, you need to use the colors even more. You have to be very conscious of what you're doing. So for me, knowing at least at 90% what's going to be printed, I prefer going for CMYK because that helps me a little bit more. When you are doing a more painterly rendered style, I think you can play a bit more with hues and details and textures and things, and so it's you can go a bit towards the RGB crazy, unexpected colors a bit more.
Hey, buddy.
Hello, Caddy.
Yeah, sorry about him. Because I work but I'll be exactly the same. But I think that there's CMYK allows you a lot more control when it comes to what you're doing. And RGB, I much prefer to paint in RGB because it gives me a wider range of color, and it lets me stress a little bit less about like what's happening. So,
Trish?
Never worked in RGB, so it's like I don't miss what I don't know. I've only learned in CMYK, and it prints in CMYK, and the production department is happy with me, so it's all good.
yeah,
So
you do have
that's
to be a lot more careful. I find in RGBs, it's very easy to kind of use a color that just doesn't make that just literally won't print, because what happens is RGB has like a fuller range of color, especially in like the cyans and pinks, and you will have this beautiful pink that literally just will not print. It'll just be like a dull gray or something like that, so.
Yeah.
Now let's go with the weird questions. More weirder, because I've been weird since the beginning, because that's who I am. The point of, do you consider coloring a book a symphony? Where you have to go up,
in a way, yeah.
down, control sometime, go really low, and then the drums come, the violins, you have to control the storytelling, because many times the art is going to be absolutely good, but flat, it's not going to give you more emotions. Or sometimes it is, and it's going to send you in that emotion, and you have to enhance it. But you are like the director of the orchestra. Shut up, Siri. Like the director of the orchestra who has to run with that song and make it with that composition and make it into a symphony. Do you think that way about your colors?
It's interesting that you use the orchestra metaphor in a way, because I like to think of it as, we have the one leading the orchestra as like the editor, and then you have like the let's say the writer on trumpets, and then like I'm on violins, and like it's I think it is a little bit like that, where there's it's narrative storytelling, that you're not going to in the first page like stick all your intense colors. You want to lead into that kind of thing, like that's really dependent on each book, on like what's happening. But I'm not going to start off with like the full cannons. You're gonna start with like a light violin at the beginning.
But do you consider it a symphony or not, or more like a rock song? 3.
Yeah, I consider it more a symphony than a rock song, personally. Like kind of those are the ups and the downs, and the in comparison. I don't know enough about music to like make like a direct comparison, but like symphony sounds better.
You don't need to know shit about music. It's just what you listen, and what you listen, the pacing, the rhythm. That's why I asked about the comparison. Is how does it feel to you? Not I'm not talking about theory. I'm talking about the instinct. My instinct always says comic books in general are a symphony. The writing, the art, especially the coloring. And I was discussing with Brian Stelfreeze on Friday, and he got really, really happy when I talk about the symphony. Like, this is the perfect way to define a comic book, because it's always about the pacing and about taking the reader up and down. It could be called a roller coaster too, but the roller coaster is not controlled, but a symphony is, right, Trish?
There's definitely a rhythm involved. I mean, it's a story. There's going to be a beginning, middle, and end, and the writer, the artist, the colorists are taking you on this journey. It's like a story, a song, a piece of music, and so there's a certain rhythm involved for sure. And like Tree was saying, it's a team effort. So everybody's playing a part in the symphony, and your editor is your conductor. He's your leader, your coach. For if you want other names for it, but yeah, definitely. And then like a symphony, there'll be parts of the symphony that are soft, some are more urgent, some are fast paced, and then it might stop dramatically. So I like that description of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Erin?
Yeah, I think for me, like, I would say that the comic book in itself, like, all of it is a symphony, not just the colors. I think that colors are, the flute or the violin, whatever helps drive the feeling of the symphony, like where you're going with it. But I think it can be a rock song. It can be anything you want. It doesn't. I think that as just like Tree said, I'm not very well versed into music terminology to know if I'm saying something horrible. But I would say that the rock song can be symphonic as well, just depending on what you want to do with it.
There's no wrong answer, as I said. I'm asking about the things, not the theory. It's like how it feels to you.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful, like we're playing together this story, just like a song or a piece of opera can do. Yeah.
Any of you sees colors as sounds at all?
As in having like the actual condition, or
No.
Well, red is always like loud.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. I'm not talking Tree. I'm not talking about synesthesia here. But I'm talking about when you say colors, as Tree said. If you think this is loud, this is quiet. If in your head they play both sides, the image and the sound part. Trish, the same.
Yeah, I like primary colors are loud, and like if you're coloring a scene that is more calm or you want to convey calm, you use more blues and greens and soft colors. Yeah, that's why sound effects are always colored intense colors, to pop. Because they're loud.
You said the word.
So like red, yellow, those are all what I consider like loud. And, of course, if you softer and lighter you go with those colors, not so much.
Yeah, the other day Esther was telling me exactly that he thinks of them as colors, and many times he asks, don't put that sound effect in there because the color is the sound. The color has to tell you without the SFX. Do you agree on that?
My memory is going back to when we used to do the sound effects in the book. The colorists used to do the sound effects coloring for them.
Yeah.
We had Adobe Illustrator to do that, and I liked that because I could always make sure that it harmonized with the coloring I did on the page. That the color of the sound effect would also pop, but also work well with what I had done. And then at some point, I've only worked with DC. At some point, they stopped that and did sound effects in production. And I was not always happy with the final result when I saw the printed book, because I'd be like, it's not the color I would have picked, So sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but
no, it's absolutely part of the question I was asking. As I said, do you think sound effects are needed in many cases, or the sounds in the colors already tells you instinctively as a reader what's going on?
I think that kind of like the sound effects and like lettering in general are still very, very important. Where it's some people will immediately pick up on what kind of subtle thing I'm trying to say through the colors, even if like it's like a high octane impact thing. I think having like a door close and going boom or bam or something like that is still necessary, it kind of it depends on the type of book as well. I think that kind of like if you're telling a more direct story, if you're telling especially kind of like a superhero story, that you kind of need sound effects there to kind of, everything is kind of high octane, we want. Yeah, and we want everyone to like understand perfectly what's happening on the page, like in an instant. I think if you're kind of talking more about like a French graphic novel that has very subtle, nuanced colors, I'd be less inclined to kind of like,
you don't want to blam.
You didn't need blam. Yeah, it just needs like kind of maybe a little bit of soft kind of colors that kind of express what's happening on the page. So I think it really just kind of depends. I'd be more inclined to say that something that, is trying to tell a story very quickly in a bunch of pages more so needs sound effects rather than something that has a bit of more room to breathe.
Erin?
I absolutely agree. I think some colors, especially some colors, do read or can be read as sounds, like can have a sound or can have if not necessarily a sound, like a strong feeling that connects to a certain amount of sounds or impressions. Definitely louder. I have thought this page is loud, so and not just because they were full of words, if it makes sense, but just like the page and the colors. It could be a good and a bad thing in many different ways, but I do think that lettering is a great tool. But I also have found situations in which I've never had to handle lettering, but I've had some situations in which looking at the page at the end, I was just like, maybe, yes, yeah, bright red is really cool, but I wouldn't have maybe picked bright red for this, because the rest of the page doesn't really work with that bright red, so the sounds clash in a way. So it's not, going back to the symphony, it's not the percussion that I would have used in that moment, but it's not up to me, and also lettering is not my trade, so maybe I'm wrong to think that
it may not be the letterer choosing the color. Like I said, it's the production department sometimes is doing it, so shout out to the letterers, because they never get enough love.
Yeah, this is not against the letters at all. It's that the excess in many things. I think regarding the comics should be based, or are based, in my opinion, in pattern recognition. It's like, don't give excess information, just let the reader complete it. So in many cases, that's why I was asking if sometimes I see a sound effect and I think we don't need it. The color is telling me, the storytelling in the coloring is telling me what's happening there. It's being loud. It's telling me, as we said before, the scene in the kitchen, we are saying this is going to happen. So in the next thing, I don't need the bomb when that person hits the other, because the coloring already told me it was going to happen, and the coloring that page is going to tell me this is a terrible situation. So many times I'm worried about the excess of information in the final page. Do you see that at all, or I am just crazy?
I think that really much depends on the art as well. So I've had some times in which I have on some creator-owned projects in which I was in a more communicative relationship with the rest of the team, and I said, hey, I think this page needs more letter, like this needs more SFX, because maybe it's just, the framing's not great to in that panel. I can do whatever I can with my colors, but if the scene is not like the filmography in there is not actually like fulfilling and giving all the information I need, the SFX is great to complete that. So I think that sometimes, yes, you can do without. Sometimes it's important to have all the tools at hand.
How much, Tri, for you, how much of your work is math and how much is it instinct?
Jesus, I'm bad. I'm definitely, like, a lot of it is just instinct. I'm just kind of like, yeah, no, red will go there. That's a nice red, a lot of it comes from experience as well, I've kind of worked on I've worked on God knows how many pages at this point, probably like easily in the thousands. And like a lot of it is just kind of experience, where like knowing that like this, this particular artist will want that, and this will work best for like high impact or like in that scene. In terms of like actual kind of color theory, I think I've kind of, I've looked at color theory. I've been really kind of trying in the last while to kind of build myself up in terms of color theory, and like there's some of it does come in, but like I think instinct always kind of just takes precedence for me, logistically. Actually kind of doing coloring as well as like it's a whole math problem in itself, kind of dealing with flatters and the logistics of like, this is going to come in at this time, so I need to get this time done, so like I have a full Google calendar most days.
Erin, how much is it for you, variation of the same question?
I think that, so when
this is how it should be done, or this is how I think it is going to work?
Okay. Well, I think for me, I mean, I also go very much by instincts. So it's, I know when you asked Tri the question, for me, it's just like my mind went 95% instincts.
Yeah, that's that for me.
And I don't know, probably thinking about it again, it's probably 85% instinct, not just not to go through. But yeah, I
don't
think
lower it. Don't lower it. I love
I think that a good percentage of the maths that I do is I have 12 days and I have to do this, and that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
much more in the organizational part of the work than in the practical presentation of it. But so yeah, I think that
so the math for both of you is not as part of the science of coloring. It's
No.
it is
Yeah,
my
I mean,
deadline and I gotta do it.
I will, as I was saying before, you know, I know color theory, like I know the basics, I know the principles, but it's, you know, I will think about values, but I will generally think, I think that with experience, that is, maybe I was trying to do that more at the beginning. So like trying to sit down and think, this is the main thing. So to make sure that this is visible, I have to do the equation and blah, 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 blah. Now with a few more years of doing this, it's more like, this is going to be like this, and this is going to, I look at the page and I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at the end of the or towards the end, I check my values and I check the things, and it's more of a check that everything is in place, more towards the 80% done page stage than beginning with I have to check all the numbers and I need to make sure that the numbers match at the end. So it's more a check-in at the end than just like thinking extremely scientifically all the way through the process.
Trish?
I hope I'm understanding the question correctly. When you talk about,
you always do.
when you say
me for many years. You understand me perfectly all the time.
Well, when you say the math, I automatically thought of like printing, you know, colors and, you know, not going too dark and, you know, values and things like that.
The math, the always prepping for what you know how it's going to look in print.
Okay.
Evaluating and all that, and then the instinct of just saying this is how it. That's how I went to Erin and said how it should be done and how I think it'll work.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a generational gap as well, because I know there's a lot of older colorists, like not in like age, but just experience, and like, you know, back in the early 2000s, I don't think printers were as forgiving when it comes to colors in a way. So like there's a lot of stuff that gets printed by me now, and I'm like, how the hell did I get away with that? You know, and like it looks great in print, but probably back in like the 90s and things, they were probably like, if you even dared to go above like a couple K, then they would like punish you harshly for, you know. So like I think it's a lot more forgiving, which can be bad in its own way, because you get like people who will go like, oh, it'll print fine, then it comes out and it looks terrible. But like for me in that sense, I'd like to stick to kind of 0K when it comes, but like I don't know, I've kind of developed a bit of an eye now with RGB, where like I can look at something and I go like, that'll print too dark or that'll print too light, you know. So it's a bit of an instinct and math.
Trish?
Yeah, you're always mindful of not going over like 270, 280. So like when you're working with a color that's especially dark, there's always the worry that it's going to be muddy or hard to read. And the last thing I want to do is obscure the art. You're there to make the art shine, you know.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go super dark and you don't want things to print badly. So there is a little bit of math involved. I have several sets of swatches that I'll use, and I have these colors for years and years. So I'm not like creating a whole lot of colors on the fly. Like I know what I'm comfortable using. I don't have to think twice about necessarily being too dark. But like Erin was saying, like, you know, you just like when you're near the end, you want to make sure the values look good. Like nothing is too dark, you know. Then you realize maybe your math was off. So
yeah.
No, but mostly instinct. I agree with that. Mostly instinct. Yeah.
Trish, do you ever feel the dread of the horror vacui, that I have to feel everything? It's like, no, this is not. Oh no, I need to work on that corner or that panel more. Do you still feel that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a control freak, and like I said, I zoom in way too much. And that's my biggest fault. I'm not the fastest colorist. I'm slow, and I am not happy unless I'm happy turning in a page where I'm feeling good about it. So
Yeah.
that's my struggle. I'm always I'm always happy with my pages. I'm not happy with how long it takes me to do them. So that's my own thing I have to work on. But I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, I was saying that you were answering it perfectly well. I was saying if you still feel the dread, the fear of the horror vacui of that, I have to feel that gap. I have to feel that space. It's
Oh,
God,
yeah.
oh God,
Well,
I need to do more.
If I'm understanding right, like, don't be afraid of white. New colorists out there, don't be afraid of white, because sometimes an artist will draw a page where there'll be an open space, and they probably want to see more white on that particular page. So don't be afraid of it. People sometimes you'll get a page and guys wearing a t-shirt and they feel like they have to make the t-shirt some color. Not everything has to have a color. Sometimes just white or just off-white is perfect. So
Yeah, you understood me very well. Your horror vacui meant that you gotta feel everything.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes things are blank for a reason.
They'd like to know, and I know you feel that too. It's the moment when you have to step back and say, no, I don't have to feel everything. Even if I feel myself like, I need to keep working. Sometimes you gotta step back. That's what I was asking. If you still feel that dread of, that on that
Yeah.
page I did yesterday, I overworked and I feel what I shouldn't have.
Exactly. Sometimes I didn't need to use 4 colors on that person's shirt. I would have been fine with 2 or 3. It's easy to get zoomed in and caught up in one little part of a page, and you do have to step back and say, okay, I've got a deadline I've got to pay attention to, and I got to make a quota every day. And it's easy to get caught up in being the artist and forget that you're also part of a team that's relying on you to keep the things moving along. So yeah.
That reminds me of when I was talking to with John Bogdanov. He told me that he worked digitally for 2 months, because when he started working digitally, every small figure, of course, he went bigger and bigger and bigger, and he could be for hours and hours and hours working on those figures. And then he said literally 2 months, because that's when he got the printed version of it, and he saw it, and he's like, figures like this big.
Yes.
He was working on them for 3-4 hours each, and he was like, what am I doing? I need to go back to my online table and to paper, because since I have the chance to enlarge, I tend to overwork in every corner. That still happens to you, Tri, or do you control that urge and you say, that's going to be a small figure, stop?
I tend to be kind of not lazy, but kind of I fight the urge sometimes. It's very easy, I think, to get caught up in it, definitely. But I always kind of you'll catch me sometimes late at night, and I'll be zooming out in the page, and I'll be kind of turning it, and I'm like, does that really need does that really need full detail and stuff like that? There was kind of comments I got many years ago. I think it was from Steve Lieber, who kind of told me that there's no point in putting rendering on that person in the background. That he's not the focus. No one cares about that person. Someone's going to look at that panel for 3 seconds, and they're not going to care. That kind of oh, she didn't put rendering on the t-shirt. What a bad colors, no one gives a shit. So
great. I'm just interrupting to say Steve Lieber is great. If you're not following him on Twitter, definitely do, because every once in a while he will throw out some very instructive tweets, and every new artist, every beginning artist, colorist, anyone in comics can benefit from Steve Lieber's wisdom. So sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. Tri, continue, or Erin?
I don't know, Tri, with them.
Go on. That's kind of basically all I had to say. It's just good sometimes to kind of take a step back and just zoom out of your work and go like, this is fine. Also, sometimes I will be like a little bit lazy and I'm kind of like, he's fine just being like purple or whatever in the background. No one's going to care.
I got the same exact feedback from Brian Stelfre's a New York Comic Con a few years ago when I got my very first book published, and we were there for the launch of the book, and I was just like, please, like crying. And I'm maestro, please. And he told me exactly the same thing. Like, where is that monster? Like, why can I see his eyes? Like, why can I see that? It's like, it's not necessary. Like, it's not necessary for you and your energy levels and the energy levels of the person who's reading the comic. So it was something that I was very, very guilty of when I started. Like, everything had to be 100%, and probably it's a perfectionist in me, and also I think the fact that I grew up mostly reading European comics and French comics, and when there is much more attention to detail and like these beautiful painterly pages, and I had kind of that mentality. And then I started working monthly series, and then 2 monthly series, and then, can you also do this other thing in the meanwhile? I was like, yeah, sure. And do you have time for a cover? And I think that really smashed my head into the wall several times. I was just like, I had to stop. And also, I would say probably working on a couple projects that I was not too excited about, and I really wanted to get them done nicely and beautifully, but I wanted to close those damn projects. And so I had to learn to make sure that like my mind was driven towards this has to look good, this has to look readable, but it cannot take me more than a certain amount of time. And that helped me synthesize. There are still some projects that I just spend double the time that I normally on my monthlies, because I don't have a specific deadline to meet, and we do like 10 pages a month. So for those 10 pages, I allow myself to breathe and have more fun and put like the little Easter eggs in the background, and I can have fun with those. But it's always in accordance with the art, so the art kind of requires me to do that, and I do that. But on things that I do on a monthly basis, in which the artist and I and the script and everything is meant to be out in 20 days, and everything has to be done. That has taught me a lot about not being too slave of the horror back way, and just thinking what is functional, what is interesting, what is readable, because this is not even going to print. I remember once a client asked one of my editors to check to change something that I could only see in Photoshop if I zoomed in 200%.
Yeah, and then what's the point at that point?
And I said, you should tell the client that this is crazy. I should not be asked to change something that is 200% zoomed in, because that is not going to, it's not that it's not going to be visible. It doesn't exist in print. That 200% is 1 pixel or less. It doesn't exist.
Even less.
Yeah.
So I've had actually moments in which I've had to explain to people. I've still had to change that because the client really wanted me to change that pixel. But so I've done it. But sometimes, especially I would say to the beginners, try to zoom out and breathe. Squeeze your eyes and look at the page. If you can read what's in the page, that is generally a good stage, and you can get on the next page. Don't get lost in 5-6 extra hours of little people in the background. It's just gonna hurt you.
But there's also I think nobody can blame you guys, if you spend more time in something that you like. I mean, you're loving a project, and you say, I'm going to spend 2 extra hours, 3 extra hours in this one. I'm not saying you take them out of any other projects. I don't like that one, so I'm not going to work less. But does it happen to you often? Erin, don't laugh.
Now, you should never put less hours into a project.
No,
you should never do it, but you know that a lot of people does. I'm not you, because you're all heavenly perfect, the angels, creators, and all that. But in other cases, does it happen to you that you're loving something so much that project specifically that you say, even if it's less sleep for me, screw it, I'm going to work extra hours on it?
Oh man, all the time. There was a recent project, and they were like, oh, this is going to be this. It's with Marvel, and I can't say it now because I think it's under wraps. But and they like, oh, do you want to do this? And I was like, hell yeah! I got the pages, and I was like, I probably spent way too much time because it was just it wasn't necessary. It was just the content really kind of appealed to me. It was like a lot of like underwater stuff basically, and I love coloring stuff underwater. So I like I spent a long time just kind of like, oh, what if I did this and what if I did that, there are definitely pages that I really look forward to, like even within like a book. I'd be like, this is all kind of talking head scenes. That's fine. I can do those. And then I get to the really exciting part where things like get really intense. I get to use the intense. So I get very excited about certain pages and certain pieces of art. Like pretty much every piece of art. I don't think I've had a book yet where I've kind of disliked necessarily like every single page. There's other pages that they're just not that they're boring, but it's a storytelling page. There's kind of a lot of text happening. There's not a lot going on, but pretty much in every book there's something that's like, oh, this would be really fun to color.
Mm-hmm. For you guys, the same?
Yeah, for me, it's I think the very first one that I've had this kind of feeling with was when I worked on Sex Criminals last year with Rachel Stott at the pencils, and I had already worked on with Rachel on Doctor Who, and I love working with her. I love her lines, and I just have lots of fun. And she draws these amazing, crazy expressions that I simply adore. Like I adore reading her pages. Like as a comic lover, I just love the faces that she draws because they give me so much just looking at them, and when I get to color them, it's even more of a treat for me. And we did the book was 40 or 42 pages, I don't remember, and I did it in 2 months, which is actually the time that I usually I do a monthly 22 page in a month. So it was actually like a normal time, but I knew that if one day I wanted to take 3 more hours on one specific page, because I was really into the flow and I was really feeling that page, or whatever you want to say about that. I was just like, I had programmed my days to make sure that I had this is the full day in which I do this project. So if I want to spend 2 more hours on this, I'm still gonna sleep. I don't believe in all-nighters. I'm lucky enough to have stopped doing that.
Wait. You don't believe in all-nighters? Are you really Italian?
No, I'm not. I don't drink coffee. I don't like wine. I'm not Italian. I'm a tea and beer person, so I'm definitely more towards trees side of the world.
I don't drink tea either, so I'm basically a heretic in Ireland.
I see. So we're the same.
I know.
So yeah,
Trish's shocked face. Mind blown. Anyway, yeah sorry.
But yeah, so I definitely. I will sleep is very important. I've stopped. I don't need to do it, so I try to keep my schedule very carefully planned. But if I try to keep my evenings for myself and my family. But if there is a page, I have to pull 1 or 2 hours more into this because maybe I really believe in this project, or it's something that I think is very important for me. I want this page to feel like this and to have this. Then I will put those couple hours more into that page. Yes.
Trish?
If some of my favorite artists are attached to a book, I just automatically look forward to it. Doesn't matter what the subject matter is. Like anything Garcia Lopez, I will stay up all night if I have to. I will sell my soul to work with him anytime. So a lot has to do with what artist is attached to a book. Yeah, I mean it's just so much more fun when you're really enjoying the pages coming in. So I keep forgetting what the original question is, because while you guys are talking, my mind is thinking of.
No. The original question was just that: is that if we're talking about being professional, which is the other side, even if you don't like it, you're going to devote the amount of hours that the book needs. Because I said you're heavenly angels, you're perfect professionals. We all know that. And if anybody else in this chat, But there's the other side of the equation, which is if you're loving it a lot, if you love the project a lot, you automatically say, I don't care how many hours.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to stay with it, even if I have not Erin, because as we said, she's not Italian. She's not using extra time. She prefers to sleep, not take coffee or drink wine. But in your case, as you said, if it's Jose Luis or somebody else, you are just going to
labor of love.
What?
I mean, it literally is like a labor of love. You know,
Yeah.
you want him to be happy, and you're just enjoying every moment of that kind of work, you know. And those are especially the ones like where it ups your game. Like
Yes.
Yeah, because you really want to try and improve, you know, on what you're doing.
I made a tweet about this a few days ago because I worked on something for DC, and it was with an artist that I adore, and I've worked with this artist before, and I think we have a very good we match very well with style in it, and I have such a great time working on their lines. It's just like it makes me happy when I get the page and I look at the page and I think this is such a good page, and I really like just looking at it. So like getting to work on it, like give it color, is such a treat. And it was a short project, but I was like, every page that I was doing, I could feel myself getting better. Like I could see, like, this is really, the previous page was really good, but I think with this one, my ideas and my storytelling and my color really shine. And at the end, it was like, I think, and I tweeted about this, like, I'm working on something, and I don't like bragging about my work. I did like something that I never do, but I was like, I think I officially say that I think I've just finished my best work yet, because I think that the pages that I've done for this thing, and I said, it really shows when you love what you're working on. Like it's you can really feel it in yourself. Like, I love my job and I love coloring everything that comes on my screen, but there are some things that are very special, and you can, as Trish was saying, you feel that those are the things that will step up your game.
Because that's the other part. That's the other part of the question too. Since you're loving it so much and devoting so many hours, when you finish it, you feel like this is my best work because I put a lot of hours into it, or you still feel, I wish I could have put more hours into it because I was loving it so much?
I think it can be a combination of both, you know, that there's times I've stepped away from a project and I was kind of like, I could have done better. I could have, when I go back and I look over the pages, and like I'm very critical of myself, and I will go back and I will like kind of like, oh, you know, I could have improved here, I could have done this better, you know. And there will also be times where kind of like, man, I just wish I could go back to like coloring that artist's work again. That was great. You know, it kind of came so naturally to me, whatever way their lines were, you know. I love coloring like Jen Bartel's work, for example. Her work is always such a treat because it's just, you know, I think her style matches like what I really want to do. I like coloring Alison's work and Ted and Rose, and there's a whole host of, I work with hundreds of artists at this point, and some of them are just kind of like, yeah, I'm really like, I'm actually enjoying myself. It doesn't feel like a job, you know.
I'm pretty sure that I know that you devoted a lot of extra time to Empire with Manuel in your case, Triona, with Carmen in your case, Trish, and with Erin, we haven't announced that project yet, so we won't say the name, but we've had this. So, as I said, that's why I know you're heavenly angels that go above.
Damn right.
Okay, let's say questions here. Pedro de Mercader from YouTube. Hello, everyone. Trish, how do you remember your time working in 100 Bullets? What were your inspirations for that series?
Oh, wow. Well, one of the best experiences I could have had. I think the holy grail for any creative in comics is to be part of a team where you all mesh together so well. And so that was like, you know, once in a lifetime kind of team, you know. And that was also my first Vertigo book. So I had been doing mostly DC Universe stuff. I'd come straight from, I think, Wonder Woman onto 100 Bullets, which was about complete turnaround as you can get. So, yeah. And it was Axel Alonso brought me on board. And so I learned, like, okay, you can have a little more elbow room as far as color choices and you know, such a great experience. Eduardo, at the time, we didn't really communicate too much. His English was not so good.
Yeah.
And so they kind of left me to do whatever I wanted. And after a while, like I got to meet him once or twice at conventions, and I kind of got a feel for things he preferred more than others. So I do feel like as Tree was saying, like you don't want to change too much during the run of a book, but it was such a long book. Like I felt like I grew as a colorist, so that by the end, I was making him and myself more happy with the things I was doing. So great experience, great team. And Will Dennis was our fearless leader after Axel, and I miss those guys. When I do go back to conventions, I'm looking forward to seeing all of them.
Yeah,
Brian,
exactly.
Eduardo, and the rest. Yeah.
Erin is going to understand this joke. I always, when I was talking to Eduardo back in the day, at the beginning, when he couldn't, we met at the Hyatt. If you remember, in San Diego, the other side of the Hyatt before they rebuilt it, where you could go out, get a bottle of wine, and drink for a while. It usually was Brian, Eduardo, and Axel and myself. Just one. I would bring a Spanish wine, Eduardo Argentinian, Axel from California, and we just sat down and I always tease him saying, the real color you want is Bonelli. You want Bonelli colors. That's why I'm saying Erin is going to get the joke, which is the most basic. We're like, no, that's not what I want. You don't ever tell that to Trish. Anyway, what were your inspirations for the book, as they were saying?
You know what was really helpful for me was to not look at American comics.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best things I ever did was go to Paris and go inside a comic shop in Paris. So there were two comic shops owned by, I think, the same owner across the street from each other. And one sold American comics, and the other one sold bande dessinées. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
So I highly, highly recommend to all new colorists, any colorist, to look at European comics. Their color sensibility blew my mind. It was such an eye-opener. I was in love. I filled my suitcase with books as much as I could carry coming back. I was just like, why don't we have these in the States? I learned so much more by looking at those books in a few weeks' time than I felt like I ever learned about color in art school, but it was just such an eye-opener. So that actually influenced me greatly. It was like a whole another door opening to color for me, So they really did influence me quite a bit. The editor was great. Will Dennis was saying, because when I did, sometimes I felt like I was being a little too hesitant to go full blast sometimes creatively, and Will would encourage me, go for it, So. Yeah.
How was it for you the first time you saw a book by the colors on a book by Mobius?
I didn't know much about Mobius, believe it or not. So he didn't have a great influence on me, to be honest. But as time has gone on, I've learned more about him. So obviously a master. Yeah.
No, I was asking because in many cases, talking with American artists, especially artists, but also colorists, there's a repeated pattern, which is the first time I saw Mobius coloring, it changed the way I felt about coloring. It opened a door because it was so different that even if I don't agree or that's not the kind of coloring I'll ever do, it just told me there's so much else you can do with color.
Yeah, and I still feel like I'm learning. So even if you're done with art school, you're not done with learning. You keep learning and absorbing things as years go by and time goes by. I'll always be noticing color in movies, whether they're animated or live action. I notice colors in illustrations. I just feel like you can never stop learning. I think it's easy to get caught up in having a big library of books, and you never crack them open sometimes. So once in a while you have to stop and say, all right, am I getting stale? Can I learn something different? And it's nice that technology is advancing so much, but are you advancing, or are you getting stuck in a rut? So I totally went off on a tangent again. Sorry.
No, it's perfect, because sometimes having so much information and so much technology, instead of helping you as an artist, it can boggle your mind. It can makes you makes you a lot more confused, right?
Overwhelming sometimes,
Overwhelming, yeah.
how much there is to look at out there, but it's good,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I didn't have much to look at in art school. So again, like I said, just because your art school days are behind you doesn't mean learning is behind you.
Absolutely.
You're responsible for your own education. And as a colorist, I think a lot of freelancers and artists have the feeling like the imposter syndrome. I feel like any moment someone's going to find out I don't know what I'm doing. And a lot of the time I feel like I don't know what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
And there's always going to be a moment when you're working on a book where things just look terrible, or you're working on a page and it's like that messy middle area. You're like, this is never going to happen. This is never going to come out right. And then it does,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I just remember when I had Bill Sienkiewicz, Carolina, a Spanish artist who's also in the chat now, asked him if he still feels imposter syndrome. And he was like, yeah. And what do you do? I just keep working.
Yeah.
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 And then, as you just said, and then one way or the other, the page finally works.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you're going to have, not every page is going to be a home run,
Exactly.
But sometimes you have happy accents. You're asking is it a matter of how many hours you work that makes it successful? Not always. Sometimes you do something by accident and it's like, oh, it works. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
But aren't those the best, the happy accidents?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you're just like, oh shit, I don't know what I did, but it looks amazing.
Oh yeah, that's happened many times. I accidentally put down yellow, and you're like, you know what? That actually works.
Yeah. Like I always feel like I'm always struggling to get the whole metal look down. Like Wonder Woman has armor, or whoever's got armor and their costumes or metal. Like I always feel like I'm not quite got the metal thing down, and then sometimes I'll do something. I'm like, oh, that worked. The accident. Yeah.
But the problem is that you start wondering, how did I do that?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
Mike,
hope Adam Hughes donates his brain to science so we can all.
wait, have you seen how he colors
Yeah.
with the mouse?
Yeah.
That's painful.
He was showing it. He was showing it on
It
the
works
screen
for him.
when we were here at the show, and he was, and 90% of the chat went like, "What the fuck?" How
it
did you
works for
do that?
him. It's like the rest of us using old tablets, and whatever works for you, works for you. So I think he's doing okay.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like an advanced level of coloring at this point. He's reached beyond human consciousness.
He shows promise.
Yeah, the guy has promise. No, but as we always say, it's not the tool; it's the artist behind it.
Oh yeah.
Mike Diodaro sends his love. Hello, Mike. How are you? Geraldo Borges was the most difficult aspect on Mike from Facebook, Geraldo from YouTube. What's the most difficult aspect on coloring work when you're a beginner? They are not beginners, so
I think we've touched on a few things that kind of blocked us when beginning. So yes, color theory is important, but you don't fixate on that. I would say one of the first things is just try, and it comes with a lot of trial and error. So everything that we suggest, at least I suggest, you will try to apply it. You will probably fail, and then you will try again, and that's fine. So don't worry. If you hear a professional give you a feedback or a suggestion, don't expect to be able to complete that the first time you try to apply that. If I tell you, don't overstress about details, for example, you will keep that in mind, but it will still, I still do that. I think as we were saying, we all still have that, spend more time now, I have to go on. I need to think of the deadline. I need to think of that. So it's just try to push yourself and also control yourself. Try to be curious and learn, and I would say just look at a lot of things. Read lots of comics. It's always a good excuse to buy more books. But just my main things when starting was just don't expect to produce what Mavis or Brian Stelfer is producing. Give yourself time. Give yourself possibility to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, just continue and work hard and study. And study doesn't mean necessarily read lots of technical books, just like learn and be curious and just do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because I think it's good to kind of, when you first begin coloring, to try and make things as distinct as possible. It's very, very easy, and I see this with a lot of younger colorists, to make things look muddy because you can't decide between like red and blue, so you go purple, or you go like an in between color, and like really, you're not kind of trying to replicate real life here. You're kind of coloring comics, and it's this weird sort of like I'm trying to make everything look natural while it's still like on a 2D page and a 2D plane, you know. So there's a lot of tricks that you can look at. So really going and having a look at how other people kind of manage even like the planes of like the middle ground, the foreground, etc. How people kind of manage values, you know, little tricks that kind of they add up after a while. But I do think like a lot of it comes down to like instinct and basically going and like being critical. You know, like I go through periods of like where I think I'm the worst colorist ever, and then I think I'm like the best. My ego is just but like it's like being critical of your work, I think is very important. Like going back after you've done a book and being like, well, you know, what could I have improved here, you know?
Yeah. And being critical don't be aggressive to yourself. Like
no, exactly. Like everyone's on their own journey.
Because we're all, I think, like for me, I'm always like, I did shit. This is horrible. That's not good. You know, if you want to be negative towards yourself, you know, give yourself those 5 minutes to shit on the work you've done, and then
let it go and move on.
And then pretend it's someone else's work, and you don't want to hurt their feelings, and you're actually saying constructive things, like telling yourself that your shit ain't not gonna make it. It's never gonna make you get better.
And if you're in the middle of a book and you're like just hating on a page and what you're doing, and step away from it, go on to a different page, take a break, take a walk. You know, I mean, that's kind of art school advice.
Sometimes sleep has been the best revelation for me in a way, you know, like
please sleep, please.
Yeah.
There's a point every night, it's usually around 10 or 11 o'clock, where I'm asking myself, if I kept working another hour, is it going to be quality work, or am I just going to be working out of guilt? And sometimes I just have to say, I'm at the age where I haven't done an all-nighter in so long. It's just not healthy. It's not good.
Will I have to fix this tomorrow if I keep working?
So get some sleep, maybe get up a little earlier in the morning, and then get back to it. But there comes a point like that last hour or two in the evening where I'm like, I know I'm not doing good work, and I'm just kind of time to call it.
Yeah, because you're blocked. You keep looking at the page, and you're never going to see the solution. You're going to get more frustrated. You go to bed, you wake up, look at the page, and it's like, oh shit, that was it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me see. Drink and Draw Carolina Benson, I'm late, but hi. Hello, Carolina. Drink and Draw Costa Rica. Hello, girls from Costa Rica. Love your work. 3 powerful, skilled women in art. That's not an everyday tweet. Thanks. Okay, if it's not an everyday tweet, it should be.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And in December, it's going to be. I'm going to give an exclusive to all of you because they're here. The full month of December, there's not going to be any males in this show by the host. It's going to be all females in comics.
Good.
And I'm going to try to do it every day of the week, doing a month. So I'm going to die.
Yeah.
But for a good purpose. Anyway, Javier González Delgado, do you have some classic artists, painters, outside the comic world as influences?
Yeah, I actually, and I saw his work recently in a gallery. When I say recently, I mean the before time. The Sorello, he's a very, very famous, I believe he's Spanish artist.
See,
yeah.
See, I say CM instead of yes. See, is Spanish.
He is. Oh, we lost Trish.
That's Trish.
Don't leave us. Don't leave us. What do you do?
Did I hit something by accident? Sorry.
Yes,
No,
you
no,
went by accident. We were making fun of you for like 3 seconds. No, I'm kidding.
but yeah, I seeing his work like in person was like it was incredible because he is like the master of, and this might be applicable to you, Trish, where you go up close and you realize that those beautiful waves that he's rendered are just simple white lines, and then you step back and you go like, oh my god, it just looks like the sea. I don't know how he does it. It like blew my mind when I saw it. I was like, how is he doing this? This is unreal. So there's a couple of other kind of artists like Degas and also Vincent van Gogh and things like that. They're kind of very heavy inspirations for me in like a lot of my work.
That happened to me with, I always say the same story. With Impressionism, I wasn't that keen of it until I saw it live, until I saw Monet in person. I started watching his paintings live, and I was like, okay, this is my favorite ever. When you start realizing what they did with the brushes, how it changes with the distance, etc., that's when it blew my mind. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible to see in person.
Erin?
For me, I think so. I've always loved photography as a medium, and I love movies and cinema, and just like I've always had a lot of passion towards those two. I've been a photographer and a videographer for a few years as a side hustle, and I still love them. And a lot of things that I've learned for art actually come from photography. So a lot of tricks and a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts. I like classical art, but I'm not very knowledgeable. Like I like beautiful things. I would like to say I'm not very good with art history. I'm never. People are always very shocked about this, but I'm not very good with that. I don't know like all the names and all the dates and all the currents, but I like. I know what speaks to me, and it could be a painting, it could be a movie, it could be a scene from a TV series. And I've always had a lot of passion for movies and photography, so I took a lot of inspiration and influence from that. Again, excluding comics and all of that, because that's a universe that is never ending.
Yeah, but this I love what you just mentioned, because many times, of course, I'm a Spaniard, you're Italian. It's like, since you're Spaniard or Italian, you automatically by law have to know all the paintings,
Yes.
Spanish or Italian. And many times I am like, no. First, there's too many.
Bad.
First, there's too many. Second, some people doesn't like them.
For me, people. First of all, people are shocked that I didn't go to art school or to art high school, which it's like that's what we have in Italy. It's like you go to art high school or to art language high school or to math high school or something like that, and then you can go to like an art academy. But so first it was like, why didn't you go to art school? And I was like, I don't like art history. It's just like the way that it's taught. I don't, learning everything by heart, and then like someone telling me, this painter wanted to say this with this painting. I'm just like, did you ask them?
Yes.
Just like that really, especially as a teenager, that really made me very upset. Like, how do you know that they meant this with this picture? I don't want to learn that. I was just like, it was not my thing. It's just.
I love it because I think it was, let me check, who was it? I think it was John Romita Jr. We were talking about this, and he told me that what he hates the most, he loves to go to museums and see art, but what he hates the most is when the curator or somebody, a guide, starts telling to people the intentions behind that painting and all that, and that he has to, bite his hand every time because he wants to yell, "How the fuck do you know? Were you there?"
Exactly.
Well, he was like, the part that annoys me the most is that I could see how much bullshit he was spewing, by that mouth. It's like, you could see the eyes like, no, I can see in the art that wasn't intentional. He was just wanted to do, a beautiful piece of art, etc. It's like, and you're trying to create a world behind it. So sometimes overthinking art I think is as bad as to undervalue the art. It's both ways. You can say too much, you can say too little, right?
Yeah, I think it's also a problem about the school systems, which is a big discourse on the side. But it's just like, I think that art is one of the things that in Italy, I mean, I've been out of schools for quite a while now, but I think that art, like a few other subjects, is one of those things that it's still very old-fashioned in the way it's taught. Like, it's very didascalic. It's very like meh, 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 fact.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why lots of kids, at least in Italy, are not very fond of art, because it's just like, or at least art history. Because it's just like seen as like you just have to learn a lot of names, and it's not fun like that. And it's a shame, because it's very inspiring if it's done, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot more about it happened in Spain until, I would say, a decade ago or so too. It was more fine arts schools and all that, and colleges were a lot more about the theory that they were about creating the art. And many people in a year or two said, screw it, this is not what I want to do. I want to learn. I want to paint. I don't want to be all day. I'm not saying it's not necessary. Of course, it's necessary to know the history of the art. But if 80% of the time is just the theory, where's the fun? Where's the enjoyment? Where's you finding yourself as an artist? I always remember, and I think I told you this story years ago when you were in Barcelona. Paloma, my wife, now works in comics, but before she was an architect. And she always tells me, the best part about studying architecture was when they took us to the street and told us, draw. Or in front of a cathedral, draw. Just be yourself and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then that's the part that was more valuable for her when she started working as a professional architect, was the real time she spent doing practical things. Because the theory didn't help.
There has to be a balance.
Yes,
exactly. I think that theory is very good and it's very important, especially if you're in an academy. So you have to be technically prepared and skilled and knowledgeable. But especially when it's high school, especially if you live in a place like Italy or Spain or many other places in Europe, where you have access to lots of museums or lots of very beautiful places. And like you were saying, like, if you see Monet from, in person, it's not like seeing a book. So like, if it was a bit more common to get kids to museums, I think that would change a lot of things for many.
And you're outside of classic artists painting a sort of comics influences of the Trish?
Classic artists. I love John Singer Sargent, who did mostly portraits, but beautiful painter. I was always drawn to illustrators from like beginning of the century. So like Dean Cornwall, fantastic to look at for lights, shadows, storytelling, composition. He's got the whole package. I love illustrators from like the 1950s and 60s, magazine illustrators like Kobe Whitmore, John Whitcomb. They're just beautiful. And those are not necessarily the ones we learned about in art school. So again, be responsible for seeking out what you're drawn to. So those are the ones I'm really drawn to most. And then, like I said, when I was in art school, I desperately wanted to be like a Disney background artist. I didn't care about animating. I wanted to just do those beautiful backgrounds. And I didn't know how to go about doing that. So I'm going to put them, whoever those people were, like Earl Ivand was the background artist on Cinderella. And his look is so distinctive from any other movie out there. So I'm going to include him because it doesn't matter if they painted on a canvas or they painted for an animated movie. I think they're all on equal plane, they're all equal to each other. I did have, traditional art school classes where we learned about Rembrandt, and we did learn the techniques of underpainting and scumbling and all this other stuff. And it was very educational. I'm glad I learned it. But every decade, every century has its own shining examples of who you can learn from. So yes, you can learn a lot from Raphael, but you can also learn a lot from Keith Haring, So, yeah.
Let me ask you, Mucha or Rockwell?
Oh, man.
I'm evil.
Oh man, that's hard. Wow, that's tough. That's like picking your favorite, I don't know. I'm gonna go with, oh boy, so close. I'm gonna go with Rockwell just because his pieces involve more storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not just what you're seeing, it's beautiful painting, but it's also, there's a story there. He's representing a moment. There's emotion, there's drama, there's happiness. Mucha was my favorite. Like, I'm saying it wrong. Mucha or Mucha? When I was in art school, I was always trying to imitate him. I was always trying to, and my hope is one day to get to his museum. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Rockwell just because there is that little bit more bit of storytelling to his pieces. Yeah,
that was why the trick question was about, because one is a more pure illustrator and the other one is, for me, that is a storyteller.
Yeah.
So that's why,
Mucha's color and design, you can't, there's no one can compare, but it's kind of apples and oranges. It's hard to compare and choose.
I know, I'm evil, as I said. People Calavera, what?
You
What?
are. Don't make me choose.
Yeah, you know that. People Calavera, hi Triona, nice to see you. I'm Victor Ibanez, by the way.
Yeah, little Victor. Hi.
Mandalorian FL21, hi everyone. Hello. Angel Perez, sorry, couldn't watch live, but thank you, Goddesses of Color, for your wisdom.
Good.
Sure.
I said, Heavenly Angels, you have been promoted.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying this worship, to be honest. It's great.
Yeah, I'll try to channel this into the next fights against imposter syndrome. Yes.
Yeah, I remember this love when I'm at midnight. I'm like staring at the page.
So
like,
why am I doing this?
Just go to the video. Just go to the video and rewatch the last 15 or 20 minutes and
Yeah.
in loop.
Screenshots.
Sebastian Narvaez, Adam is a legend. Adam Hughes.
Huge. Yeah.
Not Adam and his apples. Well, Train and Roll Costa Rica. We brought Alfonso Azpiri once, as when we talked, I pushed him to speak about his color process. There's so much to grasp. He's wonderful. Do any of you know his work and have any opinion about it?
Unfortunately, I do not. I wrote down the name, so I cannot.
No, I'm sorry. I don't myself.
What's the name?
Alfonso Azpiri. You probably saw it in Barcelona when you were here, but just.
I'm sorry.
Oh, look, he's here. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Hi, Trish. Hi, everybody. He's on the chat.
Hi, Jose.
Hi.
Love you.
Whenever Jose comes, I just do this. We are not worth it. Manoli Martinez, Spanish amazing colleague, says, "Waves, hello, how are you?" She says, "I could escape work a bit because I wanted to watch this show." Javier González Delgado, thank you so much for your answers. Mandalorian FL21, talking about the Italian or Spanish artists, I think that one of my favorite Italian artists is Riccardo Federici, and a lot more of Spanish artists like Paco Diaz and Guillem March. Okay. I'm Italian, David, but I speak Spanish and English both well. My name is Francesco.
Ciao, Francesco.
Ciao, Francesco, I guess.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello, hola, ciao.
I was not familiar with the artist. I just Googled them.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. It's very, I know, it reminds me of kind of like many other like big names in very different way, like Delotto or maybe like someone like Frazzetta. Like this, I think it comes from a big series of big names, and I can see the inspiration and I can see why it's interesting and appealing. Yeah,
Alfonso was one of the bigger names. He passed. I think almost a couple of years ago. He was one of the bigger names of the transition in Spain, after Franco. So there's a lot of his work you can see in many things, in video games and also in a lot of illustration and in comic books. And you could see he was trying to all the boundaries they couldn't break before. He was there, so you're going to see a lot of, I won't say porn, but erotic stuff and, just he did a lot of things, but that is the first thing you see when you Google, just so you know.
Yeah, it's like Manara. It's just more or less the same thing.
No, Monero is a lot more into that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you're going.
Let's say that FPD has a lot more variation in the kind of work he did than
Oh,
Monero.
yeah, sure. No,
Which
I'm talking about like googling
genius.
on
He's a
Google
genius.
and not maybe finding the exact result that you were expecting.
There you go.
Google.
Okay, so we've been at this, just so you know. Let me see the counter.
2 hours and 13
2 hours
minutes.
already. So you probably have a life to go back to. So
I
let
have
me
work
ask
to
you-
do.
Yes, life or work. But I prefer to say life.
I have no life, but I do have work.
That looks. It's nicer if I say that. Anyway, let me ask you one last thing, and then you can send me to hell. Or you can send me to hell now. Doesn't matter. I'm evil as creature, so I'm gonna accept it. Is there anything that it's been nagging you like for many years that you say, I want to do that, either as a comic colorist or outside of comics? For example, JR told me, as soon as I can retire, I'm going to just paint and the school, whatever. I'm just gonna paint. I don't care what it is. I'm just gonna paint. Nothing related to comics at all. Is there anything that you've been thinking for years? I want to do this, but you've never been able to, and you say, but before I die or retire or any of the or whatever of both, I'm just gonna do it, and nobody's gonna stop me. And we can start with Eren.
Well, I mean, I like doing comics very much. So I think that if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would still do comics. I would probably be very selective on the kind of comics that I do. But I still love to do that. And from a comic point of view, I would say I would really love to work on Thor. I guess Thor is like one of my dream projects. Just because I think it would, like, I have so many like good memories of it, like reading Thor, and just like it kind of speaks to my inner child in love with fantasy and like all that kind of epic folklore, and it's just very much what I grew up to love when I was a kid. And I think outside of comics, I would love to have more time to do a bit more photography, and especially now with lockdown, but even before, like finding things or projects to shoot is very, very difficult. And it's just like, it's time consuming. And when I have to spend a lot of my energies on just working and doing my normal life stuff, unfortunately, my camera and my very beautiful lenses that I bought and never used, or like used twice, are just calling my name constantly. So I'd like to get a bit more time.
Okay, Marvel editors around here, she wants to do Thor sometime. Before retiring, she has plenty of time still. But Thor, make a note. 3.
So from a coloring perspective, I dream of doing Superman one day. I just really like the character. I don't know why. Superman or Aquaman.
Aquaman, you said before. You love to do something that is under the
water. Yeah, and I did something like that in Marvel recently, which was a dream.
You on Superman.
Yeah.
I really see you on. I don't know why, but if you said Superman, I was like, yes, it makes sense.
I would love to do Superman one day, hopefully in the future. In terms of like what I did, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would probably still be coloring, but I just enjoy coloring. I'll probably do less projects because I'm on way too much at the moment. But I would probably be in a house somewhere, lounging, drawing like what I want to draw, kind of doing my own comics, probably, about worry about like, how am I going to pitch this or how am I going to make money out of it? Because comics, I love them, but sometimes you can't really do what you want to do because you have to make money out of it because it takes a lot of time. So I'd probably be kind of going back to more, like when I retire, I'll just be that person who like lives in a house in the woods. I'd be like Enya, who lives up in a castle in the Wicklow Mountains with 20 cats, and like kind of do whatever I want to do comics wise.
Yeah, I remember the last time we were in Dublin. I didn't say before, but normally we try to go to Dublin. I'm Galician, Celtic also. We try to go to Ireland once a year in Easter if we can, or every 2 years. And I remember we went on a. You're gonna kill me, Tree. I'm sorry. We went on a train to the place where the aquarium is. There's a big beach outside.
Oh, in Bray, yeah.
Thank you. So in the way back, there was somebody from the train or company or something, and we were going to. There was like a big precipice. And that's where Enya lives. That's the castle, and that's
Yeah,
where
yeah, that's
Bono lives.
the
And all that. Like, is that legally allowed that they live there? It's like, well, don't ask me that because you
yeah,
should.
no. Enya is like, she doesn't take visitors, she doesn't take any media. She lives with her cats in a castle with like 40 rooms, and like she's living the dream, really. So
Yeah, well, you know,
I could
I could see myself. Yeah,
I could
yeah.
do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
why
me
not?
too. Me too. Erin, so I'm going to go be evil with
Sorry,
you now.
Trish.
I'm going to be evil with you, Erin. Now
Okay,
you gotta choose Thor or Superman.
Thor.
Nah, that was too easy. That wasn't
Right.
even.
I'm a Batman person, not a Superman person. That would have been
Okay.
a clever question.
Okay, so see, here's the dog. Hello.
Aw.
And Trish, how for you?
Well, I'll answer it like two-part, like business and creative. So business, it'd be nice to have the luxury of only choosing the projects you want to work on. But of course, we're all normal humans who have bills to pay. So sometimes you say yes to things and maybe take on more than you should. Creatively, I just feel I've never worked for Marvel. That would be fun, maybe one day, just to try it. I would like to work on a Batman ongoing, which I've never done. I've worked on Batman books and big projects and one-shots, and I've done Nightwing for a short time. But I would like to say, yeah, I worked on Batman for a while. So, and finally, before comics, I fell into comics by accident. I didn't really read them. I kind of, like I said, I used to live next door to DC Comics. I was an illustrator of book covers, mostly for teen novels and stuff like that. And I fell into comics by accident, just visiting my friend one day at the office there. And I would like to go back to drawing. I haven't drawn in so long, and to see if I could still do my own art, you know. I didn't enjoy painting book jackets. It was kind of a chore and not very pleasant. But just to draw for myself, like you used to do when you were a kid, just sitting down at the kitchen table drawing
Yeah.
for the love of it. You know, I haven't done that in a long time. So I would like that very much.
That's curious. You when Axel was at Marvel, he never called you to color there, or you were under exclusive?
I wasn't. I might have been in under exclusive at then, but all the colorist exclusive went away a long time ago, so I don't recall the timing exactly. Yeah.
Anyway,
so.
we're done. You have, as I said, you have a life to go back to. Let's not mention work. You know, family and stuff. Thank you for being here. Please don't cut off because I want to say proper thank you to you after we're off the live feed. But thank you, Trish, for being here.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Tree.
Thank you.
And thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
To all of you watching, thank you so much for your questions and for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Please support colorists. Please support female creators in comics. As we said before, we need more. I'm tired of exceptions to the rule. They gotta be the rule. Okay? And use your fucking mask before I forget.
Hey.
See
Thanks
you
so
on
much, everyone.
Wednesday here with Mr. Gabriel Rodríguez of Lock and Key fame. Nos vemos el miércoles con el señor Gabriel Rodríguez de Lock and Key. Cuidaros. Kisses to everybody. Bye.